Samadhi Sutta. If you have any questions while I'm going along, just speak up.
Okay.
Let me go to hold on, modes. The Samadhi Sutta shows the proper use of shamatha vipassana meditation within the broader framework of the Eightfold Path. The word meditation in modern Buddhist practice has many applications. It is often used as contemplation or analysis, and topics popular for contemplation or analysis are suffering or emptiness, Buddha nature, conditionality, and many others. This overemphasizes simple and direct teachings that can lead to distraction by analysis. So we talked a little bit about this in our class last night. There's, as you know, Lynn, there's hundreds, maybe thousands of different methods that are called meditation, and some of them are useful, some of them aren't. But as far as what the Buddha taught and in the framework of the Eightfold Path, meditation is used primarily for deepening concentration and not so much for analysis, not for creating experiences in our mind, not for creating a trance-like state, simply to deepen our concentration. And when it's used in that simple and direct way, it's at its most effective application too. I'm going to say the same thing now. Often too, meditation is used to describe a process of deity visualization and worship, and still other applications of meditation are used to hopefully develop a quality of mind of nothingness where an inherent Buddha nature is realized. The Buddha taught shamatha vipassana meditation as one factor of the Eightfold Path for the purpose of developing the concentration necessary to support the refined mindfulness of the other 7 factors of the path. At its most profound and skillful usefulness, it is concentration developed within the framework of the Eightfold Path that directly brings cessation of all confusion, delusion, and unsatisfactory experiences. So this is the Samadhi Sutta. The Buddha addresses those gathered. Friends, there are 4 qualities that are developed from concentration. Concentration, when developed in practice, leads to developing peace and calm here and now, to developing useful knowledge and true vision. And true vision just relates to right view, understanding where we should be applying our mindfulness, developing refined mindfulness and attentiveness, and developing the cessation of craving, aversion, and delusion. So even from those words, we understand that the emphasis that the Buddha is placing on the proper use of meditation. The Buddha asks, how does the development of concentration lead to peace and calm here and now? When properly engaged in shamatha vipassana meditation, one is withdrawn from sensuality and unskillful mental qualities. They enter and remain into the first jhana, which is delight and pleasure born of withdrawal and accompanied by focused thought and insight. I'll probably give a talk on the jhanas maybe next week or soon, but there's articles on my website about the misunderstanding of jhanas and 4 levels of jhanas, and they're often taught as especially the 3rd and the 4th jhana, as more than just a level of meditative absorption. It's often taught that they're advanced stages of meditation and that require a lengthy process to develop. And even the experiences that are described in the 3rd and 4th jhana are described in usually mystical connotations. When the Buddha used the term jhana, he was simply using the term to describe the natural levels of consciousness that every one of us achieves in a simple meditation practice. They may go unnoticed at first because our concentration isn't developed well enough to recognize when we've had experiences in the 3rd and 4th jhanas. But everyone, even if it's just for a moment, has experienced the 4th jhana of just a mind of resting in equanimity, a calm and peaceful mind. It usually doesn't last at first, but we develop that over time. And the reason why that's important is if we set the levels of meditative absorption up as something that's advanced, it's very easy to start creating a grasping attitude towards them rather than simply recognize that that's what's occurring, which is how the Buddha described the jhanas. He continues, as concentration deepens further, they enter and remain in the 2nd jhana. Focused thoughts and insight begin to still. Delight and pleasure born of composure and inner assurance arise. It's a lot of words to start saying that we start enjoying our meditation practice. As concentration deepens further, they enter and remain in the third jhana. Delight and pleasure and the perception of pleasure and pain disappear. Equanimity and refined mindfulness increases and a peaceful mind prevails. So he's just describing an ongoing process, even though it's described as 4 levels. There's infinite levels of subtlety that we're developing as equanimity and peace develops. But it's just to point out, okay, now I'm at a deeper level of that peaceful mind. As concentration deepens further, they enter and remain into the 4th jhana. Mindful equanimity prevails. Greed and aversion disappear. This is the development of concentration that brings peace and calm here and now. And so, again, I'm sure you've experienced that, Lynn, whether it's for just a few moments or for an extended period of time. It's the 4th level of equanimity, of mindfulness, of meditation. And it's simply there to be recognized. And if you relate that to the understanding that meditation is for developing concentration, the more well concentrated we are, the more calm and peaceful, the more our mind is resting in equanimity. So it's just describing the deepening process of concentration. And how does development of concentration lead to developing refined mindfulness and attentiveness? As concentration deepens, the impermanence of feelings is understood. As concentration deepens, the impermanence of perceptions or thoughts is understood. As concentration deepens, the impermanence of thoughts is understood. This is the development of concentration that brings refined mindfulness and attentiveness. So last night's talk was on, last week's study, and the Dhamma study was on the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And that relates to this deepening concentration too. The Buddha points out in that to simply recognize that as we, excuse me, as we quiet our mind, we're able to recognize feelings arising and thoughts arising and the impact that feelings and thoughts can have on the quality of our mind. And if we remained in a dispassionate point of view, then our feelings and thoughts arise, they subside naturally, and they don't affect the quality of our mind. Again, pointing back to concentration. And how does the development of concentration lead to the developing, the cessation of craving, aversion, and delusion? As concentration deepens, one remains attentive to the arising and passing away of the 5 clinging aggregates. So the 5 clinging aggregates, I know you understand what that means. It can also be looked at as 5 clinging views. And so as we recognize in meditation these things that are arising and passing away, we're recognizing in a very direct way the arising and passing away of self-referential views. And as we develop that understanding, we realize that these temporary views that we hold of ourselves have no substance, and we can observe their insubstantial nature by their fleeting nature. And that makes it much easier to begin the process of letting go of these self-referential views, these clinging views that we use to describe 5 clinging aggregates as me. Is that clear?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. One of the nice things about having this is that I can ask those questions online too. I think this is remarkable technology. But the Buddha continues, they know the impermanence of form, of feelings, of perceptions, of mental fabrications, of consciousness. In short, we understand the impermanence of these 5 clinging aggregates. This is the development of concentration that brings the cessation of craving, aversion, and delusion. So the Buddha specifically applying concentration to what he ultimately described as dukkha, the 5 clinging aggregates, which again is the same as describing dukkha as our hardened self-referential views that we're using to describe ourselves in relation to reality. When we can recognize and abandon those views, it changes everything, and it allows us to develop a true right view, or right vision, as the Buddha used the term in this sutta. He concludes, friends, these are the 4 qualities that are developed from concentration. Those who understand the 3 marks of existence, for whom there are no disturbances, free of desire, at peace, this one has abandoned confusion, delusion, and disappointment. Again, he's bringing this back to the essential understanding that brings a clear knowing of the 4 Noble Truth is the teachings on the 3 marks of existence: impermanence, not self-characteristic, and the resulting dukkha. And of course, we need a Oh, there goes my computer. A deep level of concentration in order to recognize those. That must sound awful, Lynn.
No, it's not really loud at all. I can barely hear it in the background.
Good. I'm glad. I can hear it, but I'm glad it's not disturbing you. So that's the sutta. What do you have any questions or comments on the Samadhi Sutta and the importance of deepening concentration?
No, except that I agree. It's important and it works. Since I've been practicing the type of meditation that you teach, since we started the course together, I've really noticed an improvement in my ability to keep my mind clear when I'm meditating. I have, over the years, developed the ability to be able to push things out of my mind when I need to focus on something else, and that just comes with being in the military and being in the medical field. Sometimes you have to narrow your focus and push everything else away, and so I learned that early on in life, and it's helped me to be able to apply that skill to working with concentration and meditation, so that where a lot of people say they have trouble with thoughts going through their head, and they start ruminating on whatever thought that is. Yep. I'm so fortunate that over the years I've been able to conquer that, and I have no trouble making thoughts go away. I read a really interesting thing not too long ago, somebody's comment about meditation, advising people that if they had that problem, they had a thought that wouldn't go away. Her suggestion was to write it down so you would remember it, and just tell yourself, well, I'll think about you later. Yeah. So I thought, well, that's a good idea, except I don't want to stop what I'm doing to write down a thought. So I thought, I'll just tell it to go away, and I'll think about you later. And if I remember to think about it later, fine. That means it was moderately important. If I don't think about it later, then it probably wasn't worth floating through there in the first place.
That's right. Yeah.
So I found that with really persistent thoughts, that seems in some strange way to have helped. If I start ruminating on something that is interfering with my meditation, I can just say, okay, I see that you want my attention, but I'm not going to think about you now. I'm doing something else. Go away. I'll think about you later. And funny thing is, that works.
That works, yeah.
And then I can, I just will close my eyes, and I'll kind of picture the spaciousness of nothing, the emptiness and the spaciousness that's just there when you close your eyes, and try and float in that darkness, or lightness, whatever is there when you close your eyes, which is different all the time.
Oh yeah. Hey, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so I really enjoy the meditation because it's just so calming and relaxing, and I feel like everything falls away. Sometimes I can just become so relaxed with it that I'm completely unaware of my body or the passage of time. And I think I've mentioned that sometimes when I'm meditating to your recording, I don't even hear your callbacks because I'm just so I don't know where I am, hopefully not ruminating on something that I'm not aware of. That's a possibility, but I usually come back to myself feeling very relaxed. So I don't think I was off in La La Land ruminating about anything or having little fantasies.
No, I don't think so either. That's the effect and the experience of deepening concentration. While you were talking, I was thinking about the Vitakka Sutta and how in that sutta, the Buddha, the sutta on the relaxation of thoughts, he concludes the sutta with saying that you'll develop the ability to think what you want to think when you want to think it, meaning that we've gained control of our thinking process, just like we have control of our bodily movements and grabbing a drink. It's the same thing. But we need a process for doing that, and that's concentration. And when we can do that, then we can hold in mind the proper framework for experiencing our life. And it works in a very simple and direct way. When you first started meditating, did you, how do I ask this question? Did you understand that concentration was really what you were looking for? Or hoping to develop
Well,
is probably a better way to ask the question.
when I started taking the course with you, that became clear. When I first started meditating, I was kind of all over the place,
Yeah.
you know, 5-10 years ago, doing just more healthcare based mindfulness for stress reduction.
Yep.
I've been doing that for years. I have this hearing problem. It's called tinnitus or tinnitus, depending on who your doctor is.
Yeah.
It's
Has
that high-pitched ringing and squealing and squeaking in your ears. Mine is a result of acoustic trauma from the rifle range back in the 80s when I was in the Army.
Wow.
And so basically, I have this noise. It's really not a sound. It's in my head. It's caused by the nerve cells in your inner ear being damaged. And so it sounds like there's a whistling tea kettle or chirping crickets. It's always there. It never goes away.
Wow.
People actually commit suicide over this. It's a terrible thing because there's no treatment for it. There's no cure for it. So when it first happened to me, I thought, well, I'm going to lose my mind over this. And so I had to learn to do something to make myself not hear it, because it's always there. You just have to teach yourself by distraction or masking or whatever to not hear the sound. And so when I first learned to meditate, that was my focus, was just to try and get to a point where I could relax and not hear this supposed sound that my brain is making me think I hear.
Wow.
I read somewhere once that Vincent van Gogh cut his ear off because he had that problem.
Is that why? Wow.
Well, I read this. I don't know if it's true or not. Excuse me.
I had a student was coming to, I think it was the Flemington classes, and that's the reason why he started coming to class, was because of his tinnitus. He found some benefit, but I guess it wasn't enough, and he dropped out. So you found it helpful though, and
over the years, yeah, I've learned all the triggers, that things that make it worse, things that make it better, what kind of environments really aggravate it. You know, like restaurants with bad acoustics makes it really bad. I can be sitting right next to somebody in a noisy restaurant and I can't hear what they're saying because the sound is so loud. You know, it really disturbs me that the military hasn't put some money and effort into finding a treatment for this, because, you know, 95% of the people in the military carry firearms and use them, or are in artillery jobs where they're constantly exposed to loud noises. In the Air Force, people on the flight line are constantly. So it's an occupational hazard for a large percentage of the military. Not to mention it's in you know, just regular people. It's like musicians suffer.
Oh yeah.
If they're not careful with the decibel level.
Yeah, I'm surprised that I haven't developed it yet, because in construction, I've hardly ever worn ear protection. It's funny, I'll think about eye protection, but I never think about protecting my ears. Yeah. And I don't have tinnitus, but I do have trouble in restaurants when they're noisy. I can't hear the person sitting next to me, so I tend to not go to those restaurants. But
a lot of that is aging, John. We're at that age where we start to lose. It's called discrimination, sound discrimination, and so that you really have a hard time hearing what people are saying in restaurants. Old age is just a terrible thing.
It is. I'm starting to lose that discrimination in my eyesight too. I've noticed that the detail, it's subtle, but the details just aren't there anymore. And it is part of everything. You know, it reminds me of the. I think I said it in class last night, and it's a little strange for me to say this, but to take to the Dhamma like your hair's on fire. You know, it's important. Yeah. And we don't have all the time in the world. One of the things that the Dalai Lama said that I really like is he said the purpose of time is to awaken. That's why we're here. You know, put it to good use. So that being said, we're having a little bit of a personal conversation here, but that's okay. How has your Dhamma study been since you've finished the course?
Well, I go back and review things and contemplate. Like I said, when I get up in the morning, my routine is to start to meditate within 30 minutes of getting up. So I'll make a cup of tea and go around, check the house, do my little thing while I'm getting to a place where I'm awake enough to sit and meditate without falling back to sleep. And so while I'm doing that, I'm like mentally setting my intention for meditation by mentally go over the Four Noble Truths and, recite the steps of the Eightfold Path. And I think, well, what do I want to focus on today? What's on my agenda for the day? I'm going out in public, so let's have right speech be on your agenda for the day. Things like that. Or so I'm just kind of trying to incorporate the whole study of the book and other things that we're not so like devoted to a chapter in the book, like the three poisons. I try and think about that a lot, because to me that's the root of every single negative emotion there is in the world.
Absolutely,
a combination of those three emotions. So
yeah,
I think about that.
That's such a powerful insight, Lynn. It really does come down to greed, aversion, and deluded thinking, and we have to recognize that that's what the Buddha understood. But he also understood that we have a conditioned reflex to not wanting to look at that. But it's simply part of our existence, and it leads to all of our confusion, delusion, and ongoing suffering. It's very useful insight. So it's obvious that you have develop the Eightfold Path in a very useful and effective way as a framework for your life, which is exactly how the Buddha intended it to be used. So good for you.
Well, thank you. I'm highly motivated because, I just spent so much of my life in a miserable state, just, thinking there's just got to be more than this. I'm just never content, or I can't find this meaning to life. I can make myself happy and I can surround myself with pleasurable things, but unless you have a deeper understanding of the point of being alive, you never reach any satisfaction with anything. And so I had to find an answer to this question for myself, and I found it in Buddhism. I just did.
Excuse me.
So it's something I want to continue to deepen my understanding of and deepen my embodiment of it into my daily life, how I face the world and how I deal with people. And I'll stop talking now.
No, it's such a pleasure to hear you describe it, because you describe awakening beautifully. The stop, Bodhi, you're distracting me. When the Buddha left the palace grounds to seek understanding, remember, he had everything that any human being could ever want, and he knew it, and it wasn't enough. He said something's missing. He didn't know what it was at the time, but it was that inner knowing that the outer trappings of human existence don't provide any real happiness or meaning in life. Right. Where is it? And that's what set him out on his search. And what he understood was that even that angst that you're describing is part of the First Noble Truth. No matter what we can get and attach ourselves to in the external world is going to prove to be disappointing. Why? Because it's all impermanent. And we know that. Even when I remember there was a time in my life when I was very crazy and making a lot of money, and I bought a new car every year. And every single time I drove off the lot, it was disappointing, because I knew that I just lost money and it's no longer new. And I was already thinking about, what am I going to get next year? I couldn't even appreciate that brand new car that I'm driving, because I need more. I need this constant attention, or I should say my ego needs constant attention to remain happy. When you withdraw that need for external happiness, all that falls away, and you gain this peace of mind of that comes from just understanding what we're living for and what we're living through.
Right.
Changes everything.
And it's so hard to explain that to people. It's something you have to experience for yourself.
Yes.
You do an excellent job of teaching it, and you do an excellent job of conveying that to the students. I can hear it in your teachings, in your podcasts, in the comments that the Sangha members, give back to you as their feedback. So you really are a gifted teacher at explaining things that almost can't be taught. They have to be experienced.
Yes.
So you're putting them on the right direction. You're kind of opening their eyes, because you've done this for me too, to make me look at things in a certain way or question my beliefs or my understanding or my definition of a concept. If my gut reaction might be, well, I don't agree with that. Where's he getting that from? And then I stop and think about it, and I'll go, oh, okay. Well, yeah, he's right. That is the way it is. And so I really enjoy that. Well, and I can see that happening with your Sangha members on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. It is remarkable to be in my seat and watch the understanding develop through individuals. Mm-hmm. And I say it often. I can tell by the questions they ask, the way that the questions are framed, if they're really understanding it, and that you're right. You cannot explain the actual experience, but that's why the Buddha always used that term ehipasiko. Here's the right direction, and you have to experience it for yourself to prove the efficacy of it. And once you have the experience, then you'll incorporate it into your life. And that's the problem with a trying to develop a conceptual type of Dhamma. In other words, a Buddhist is always compassionate and at peace. So just be like that. Just be a compassionate person. But we can't do that because we have conditioned thinking. But we can do it with the broader framework of the Eightfold Path guiding our practice. So I'm glad you could join today, Lynn. It's so nice to connect with you like this, at least every week. So
yeah, very nice.
Any questions or comments before we close it for the day?
No, just thanks once again, because like you just said, I've been studying Buddhism for a few years before I took your course, and it was more like what you just described, a more conceptual, analytical. I read these books, I understand these concepts, but I had not been able to get really like over that hill of making it internal. It was in here, but it wasn't in here. Yeah. And I wasn't able to move it into my whole body. It was still in my brain being analyzed and understood. And I knew that was a good direction for me, but it wasn't until I took the course with you, not just reading the book, actually taking the course and getting the feedback and listening to the podcast, that I was able to make that transition. I don't know how it happened, or it wasn't a sudden thing. It was just more like a seeping into me.
Yeah, it happened because of the integration of the Eightfold Path, but that's not even something that you can't say, well, it's very subtle, and and it works because it's working on our conditioned mind. It's very hard to see it as it's occurring. So it's in retrospect, as we start developing a more calm and peaceful mind, that we say, well, yeah, this really works. I'm seeing things differently. I'm developing right view. I'm seeing myself in relation to the world differently. That's how we know that it's working. Right. It's always in the proof of the pudding. And I was just like you, just like many other modern Buddhists. I had a head full of knowledge of what Buddhism meant from all the different traditions. And I never understood how to apply it. And honestly, I had some very well-known teachers, and none of them could ever tell me how to apply it. They could tell me how to be a Buddhist, but not how to develop an understanding of what the Buddha actually taught. And it was only when I got back to the Buddha's direct teachings that it made sense. I said, oh yeah, this is what I do with my mindfulness. This is what I do with concentration. This is how I developed a virtuous way of living in the world, rather than just seeing it as an ideal for me to live. I had no way of doing that because I had a conditioned mind up until that point. So it's remarkable. It's never lost on me how remarkable the simplicity of this is, but how effective it is to get past our own complicated thinking. And it works pretty well. So
we have wonderful and terrible minds.
yes. Well, Lynn, as always, what a pleasure. Have a great holiday, and I hope I see you next week.
I will be here.
Great.
Did you solve your problem with the recordings for the Tuesday evening sessions? I listened to the first one, and you're right, it was very garbly.
Yeah, I deleted it, and I haven't solved it yet, but I'm working on it. I hope within the next week or two I can get it back going, but we'll see. It's a little bit of a challenge, but I
hope it works out for the best.
Yeah, I do too. I'm looking forward. It's so nice to be able to bring the Sangha online, so I'll get it worked out in a week or two. So
good, sounds good. Thank you so much, John. I appreciate it.
Have a wonderful day. Happy holidays.
You too, John. Take care. I'll see you next week.
Great. Bye-bye.
Bye, John.